Father's Day weekend is upon us. And every year, and I tell him this, when Father's Day is rolling around, I think of one person, and that is Dr. and now Ambassador Jerry Cammarata, dear family friend. We just adore him. I want to tell you a little bit about him. Of course, we'll have all the information because we don't have enough time with his incredible, incredible career, his background, all he has given to the community, not only New York State. He's a wonderful New Yorker, but across our great nation on the national level. He has done so much. It would be like our own Bible called the Jerry Cammarata Bible. So let me tell everybody a little bit about him. An incredible warrior, first father to be granted paternity leave in the United States, a noted child rights advocate. I'm throwing this one in, Jerry. Guinness Book records holder for the longest singing marathon. We're going to talk about that soon. In addition, he is a featured contributor to medical and political journals. He's a national columnist. He's a sought-after guest speaker. He is a warrior. But besides all of this, this is so important. His career in health, safety, education, licensed speech language pathologist, licensed and board certified audiologist, and certified safety executive. Jerry, I'm exhausted already. Dr. Jerry Cammarata, if that's not enough, warrior out there. President Carter's appointee to the White House Conference on Families and President Reagan's appointee to the Selective Service System, and was the chairman of the Civilian Review Board of New York City. He is now ambassador to the UN from the World Safety Organization, besides promoting global safety network and academic safety curricula in universities. Now, this is very important. Listen up. He gets to talk to government leaders about family in their countries as well. So much needed. Jerry Cammarata is the author of the definitive book on fatherhood. Get ready, everybody. The Fun Book of Fatherhood, a Paternity Leave Dad Tale of a Pioneer. Remember, I'm going to have all the information, how you can buy the book, how you can read more about Jerry. It is a must because he has infectious energy. He is a tried and true doer, and that's what we like at the Warriors. And he is a great gift to all of us. So welcome, a dear friend, Dr. and now Ambassador Jerry Cammarata.
Thank you, Lynn, for having me, but you left out one accolade.
Oh, which is that?
I'm my mother's son.
I'll put that in the body of the video.
Please,
you know what I like? You know what? I'm going to start all the information when I go back and add everything in and the links. I'm going to start with that if that's what you would like.
Without her, nothing else would have happened.
Absolutely. I like that, Jerry. Giving moms the credit due on Father's Day weekend. I like that.
True.
First of all, let me ask you something before we dive in with all kinds of things about fatherhood, families. Why do you keep so busy, Jerry? Like I can't turn around. You're at an opening, you're at the show, you're at an art gallery, you're like in Palm Beach, you're in the Hamptons, you're like all over the world. I think you were in Europe recently. Why, Jerry? Why are you so busy? What's going on?
Well, it's not so much of what I give. I think the importance of being busy is how much you can learn. And if you're not around and you don't explore, you don't grow. And if you don't grow, your mind doesn't really develop in its philosophy and in its content. And therefore, you really can't do as much good as you would like to. So I find it as a great learning curve. And every place I go, somebody's teaching me something more than what I already knew. And I think that makes myself, and for all of us that like to travel and do great things, it just makes us better people, more informed people, more eclectic, and more ability to tolerate each other, tolerate our differences, our cultural differences particularly, and absorb them and become part of that fabric that makes up this global world we have.
Jerry, that's such a beautiful answer. We need to make a sound bite out of that and share that with everybody. I mean, because that is really what it's all about. You just captured that so beautifully, saying that we don't know unless we go out there and experience other things, what's really going on, right? We're all in our little bubbles.
Well, for example, by just being home, for example, you see your children, you see the children in school, you see the neighbors, and everything very often is somewhat happy-go-lucky. Everybody is content, we're secure, we have all of the things, the resources that we need in our communities. And then you go around the country particularly, and you say to yourself, why are there 365,000 children going missing in the United States every year? And of the 360,000 missing, why 30% of them are being trafficked? That's 100,000 children being trafficked in the United States. And you look at that against what we have in our individual communities, and you say to yourself, there's something desperately wrong here. And what's driving all of this? Could it be economics? For example, throughout the entire world, it's like $150 billion business on human trafficking. So if there's an incentive to do this, it's affecting our children in a very, very negative way. And if you don't travel, you don't learn things like that. And therefore, you don't take ownership of problems that are out there, and then you don't try to do something about it. So I see some of the problems, particularly with human trafficking, and I know, Lynn, this is what the Warriors is all about. I mean, you spend all of your time thinking about what's happening to children and women, particularly, but men included.
Yes.
But all of this would have gone by the wayside if I didn't travel, look at it, find out about it, and then try to talk to people about what they're doing in their communities not to make this happen. How are they protecting their children? Are they keeping them away from social media? I mean, our children, by the age of 1 in 3 of our children are exposed to social media by the age of 5 years old. That means there are independent sources, not parents and not even guardians, but independent sources that are framing the mindset of our children, and very often in a very negative way. And unfortunately, as part of that, by the time one is 18 years old, 1 in 3 children are exposed to sexual activity inappropriately, without conversation, without parents. That's intolerable. And these are the things that we not only have to work on here in the United States, but we've got to work on it internationally, particularly what's happening in Africa, in Asia. Our children certainly do need to be protected.
It is, I have 50 questions, of course, now for you. Something I do want to bring up, and I have to say, Dr. Jerry, I'm a little angry because there is actually a brand new study put out the end of April. We talk about it on the Warriors. I've talked about it on other programs I go on. A little known study. We traditionally say $150 billion business. Do you know that the National Institute of Health put out, it's really 350 billion? Because that 150 was from even before COVID kind of thing. And they were always saying 43 million people trafficked, when we know it's in excess of, we can't, the experts we speak with say, like, it's so hidden, this kind of crime. Forget everything written. It's like so much higher. So I want everybody, mainstream media certainly doesn't talk about this. People will say routinely to me, Lynn, why is this happening? It's money. We have to be real. We have to be real, Jerry, like with what we're talking about. There's a lot of money to be made. So what can we do? What you're pointing out, going into communities, traveling, talking to people, seeing what's out there, boots on the ground, and then bringing that home, and getting other people to talk about it, and then educating and getting back to, we got to get back to families, Jerry. And that brings me to my next question. Let's go back and talk about your book, The Fun Book of Fatherhood. Give us a little background how that came about, because you certainly were a trailblazer with that. So I want to bring people back to how much really of a trailblazer you were. I mean, you continue to be, because it's incredible. I was reading again, and I know a lot about you, but I was reading again last night, brushing up on you, and I'm like, this is a gutsy guy to do this, way back then. So tell us about that.
Well, back in the early 70s, there was this great proliferation of literature and of activism in terms of women's lib. And that was penetrating the curricula. And as a teacher at that point with the New York City Board of Education, it got me to think that, well, if women are looking to be liberated, and that liberation, by the way, is fair share, that they would have an equal opportunity with men, then why not on the other side, shouldn't men have an equal opportunity with women, particularly when it came to raising children? Remember, prior to this point, we had the Industrial Revolution, and we had the problem with that in dividing families. Levittown is a perfect example, and we kind of use that as the stereotypic place to be. Mom is at home in the suburb, dads go to work in the city, and that just alienates the ability of two parents to really help in the development of the children at home. Obviously, there's no longer Little House on the Prairie, but that's all right. We can find something in between. So I decided as a teacher, when my wife became pregnant with our second child, that I would say to them, I want a paternity leave. And they said no. So we said, well, then that's something that we're going to have to discuss. And before it ever became a lawsuit, the Federal Equal Employment Opportunities Commission in Washington, D.C., hearing of the case, and in fairness to Congressman Ackerman, who was fighting for this policy in Washington, they finally decided that there was a discriminatory action in employment law, and that if you're able to give a maternity leave, you must be able to give a paternity leave. And that set the case for me going back to the New York City Board of Education and saying, I want a paternity leave. And with the unanimous decision, I then got what ultimately became the very first paternity leave in the country. I'm proud of what I was able to get accomplished. I'm disappointed, however, that here we are 50 plus years later, and we're now only working on individual states giving us the ability to have paid family leave, but we don't have a national paid family leave policy. As we discussed in part with the White House Conference on Families in the 80s, nothing all of these years has ever transpired. And until we have this equality across the country, where every company in every state will honor dads as well as moms and get paid family leave to give both of them a support, even more than 12 weeks, but give them the support that they need to raise children, I fear that things like drugs, bullying, a lack of parental involvement is going to just proliferate. And that proliferation is going to be a further destruction of our family when at a time when it's most valued and needed to bring our families together.
Now, I'm just going to mention, sometimes you're freezing, Jerry, but that's okay because, this is what happens with the tech world these days. But I throw that out there so somebody watching, they will say to me eventually, do you know Dr. Jerry was freezing? I'll be like, yes, that's tech 2024. So I'm giving the heads up right now. It's fine. We keep going because we hear you very clearly.
Thank
So what
you.
did you do? So during your paternity leave, now, how did the book come about? When you were you actually, now share with us, it's decades later. Did you actually like change diapers and do like house things?
We did all of the things. We sold one of our cars. We moved in with the in-laws, and we shared all of the experiences that were necessary to share. And I think the book came about more from an advocacy of the press than anything else. This should be put in writing. This should be put in writing. And I thought about how it needed to be put in writing. And I thought, well, it certainly needs to reflect the things that we were doing. And we found ourselves at the zoo quite often. And I said to myself, there's something about animals that maybe we need to reflect upon. And by the way, we really need to reflect upon it today, because the essence of family, the essence of what you do collectively in a community, a family community, we can see before us in the animal community. And it was really interesting letting the children make decisions about what they would like to do, not as mommy and daddy would tell them, but rather as mommy and daddy showed them by taking them to the zoo. So if you saw a giraffe eat, for example, my God, sitting at the table, eating in the cage, the neck erect, eating so glamorously. And then you saw the raccoon just slobbering their face. It didn't take us to say to the kids, eat neatly. All we really had to say, are you a raccoon or are you a giraffe? And if they said, well, I want to be a giraffe. Well, how does that? Well, the giraffe does this, Daddy. Wow, that's terrific. That really is great. So the animals then became the glue that brought all of our ideas of parenting together. And consequently, the Fun Book of Fatherhood is just an array of examples of how animals live. And if you take the seahorse, for example, thank God for dad seahorses, because they actually raise the young. All the young go into their pouch, and it becomes their responsibility. I think today, for example, that the number of children that we're birthing is decreasing. We're going from a family size of 3.7 to 3.4, even below. And this has been escalating since 2007. And then I think of the codfish. I mean, the codfish deliver 6 million eggs. The oysters, 500 million eggs. And although it's a little tangential, it's a little far-fetched, it brings the message home. Why do animals have so many young? Because they want to propagate who they are, what they do. Their community needs to survive. And I think the human community is not surviving because we have no value and no desire to want to bring up children in a world that we believe will not really help them be successful.
Yeah. You're also talking about, we preach a lot. I use the word preach, and I'm proud of it here at the Warriors. Forming these family partnerships. I think you were kind of talking about that, back in the day. Fast forward, that holds no matter what, no matter where we are in the 70s, or now we're in 2024. Certainly that we have to, something I see lacking, Jerry, we don't today include the kids in decision making, or that kind of creative thinking where you use the animals, to form a conclusion, let them form a conclusion, sort of thing. You're a dad, you're a granddad now. Give us some thoughts on what you think right now in 2024, things you think we have to seriously look at. What would be some of your top issues?
Well, the top issues I think are, or all surround what we need to do as individuals. Clearly, there was this movement about it takes a village to raise a child. If it takes a village to raise a child, but it's the village raising the child and not the parent, then we've got a problem. If we have parents and villages raising our children, I think that really is very, very wholesome. But we need to spend more time together. Less technology is very, very important. This interaction is just so incredibly favorable in bringing our children up. We need to show more affection to our children. They need to see affection so that they know how to deal with that affection themselves. Clearly, we need to be role models. We need to be able to show them what we've gotten accomplished and what they can also get accomplished, and then to support them every way possible in order for them to get those things done. A lot of our children don't have self-esteem. They don't feel good. We're more apt to tell them, don't do that, or that's not good enough, or I don't know, maybe you will be, as opposed to you're great, you can do it, we'll be there for you. Can I help you get the things you need to get accomplished? When they feel good about themselves, then they're going to feel good about getting things done.
Yeah,
Do we share our activities at home? Remember the pictures of the girls watching mom cook, and the boys are outside helping dad. Is that happening anymore? We don't. We see it in magazines, but I clearly don't believe that is happening, because we're living in a two-wage earner family complex in this world. Half of all of our U.S. families have two-wage earners. Therefore, they're not seeing moms and dads doing things and trying to emulate them. And that really that's sad. That really is sad. And that's because the economic engine of this country, our economic design, is not helping to fortify students. I truly believe companies must provide a social community for parents. If they want to have a company and they want to bring parents in, they need to support those parents. Those companies such as Netflix, Google, other tech companies, and there are other companies as well, where they will have nurseries in the in the complex, where they will have schools and teachers. That means a lot for the parents to be able to work to make the money that they need, but at the same time to be there with their children and to share those daily experiences.
So necessary. I feel like I'm going to say Ambassador Jerry. I like saying that, Ambassador Jerry. I feel like we were heading in that direction. I don't know when, late 70s, like 80s, where they were starting to put in, and it was so new at the time. We're gonna have the nursery in the office building to help the moms that want to work, and then all of a sudden, like kind of poof, like I don't hear anything about that anymore.
And that's because it costs money. And it
Well,
all boils down to that. And that really is the unfortunate part of the equation. If it wasn't for that, we would have it. And then of course you have the tension between the schools that want to maintain their authority of teaching rather than perhaps allowing that now to occur in isolated areas within companies, and that becomes a political conversation, and that's tragic.
tragic in a separate program because I really wish in my dream warriors world that these companies, these corporations, especially big tech, because they're at the top of the heap right now, would really step up with their billions upon billions of dollars and really want to formulate this kind of model to encourage, because I see it's like this vicious wheel everybody is on and can't get off. At least a lot of the families, the moms, the dads we speak to tell us this. They're so busy just existing, feeding the family, getting to work, keeping a roof over their heads. That's like what we need to talk about. People forget about that basic necessities. We can't get beyond that to better and not keep repeating that wheel. And that I find tragic. So Dr. Jerry, with all of this going on and everybody is overwhelmed today, what do you think, as it is Father's Day weekend, what do you think dads should be grateful for?
I think we need to be grateful for that we have done the best we can, and there shouldn't be a dad out there to feel guilty about everything that they have been able to contribute. Yes, so far we've talked about all of the things that are going wrong out there and things that dads should be doing, but let us be introspective. Let's really look about the things that, with the limited resources that perhaps many have had, what they have been able to give their children and what they've been able to give society. And then from there, try to, in their mind, build what they believe to be a better life, and then to work toward that. And not to be afraid to work with other parents to develop a better community around themselves in order to understand the things that perhaps can still be done, but that maybe they didn't understand themselves in their own thought process. These networks, these communities that we develop, really help us to better understand ourselves, better understand the things we need to get done, and ultimately will have an effect on the quality of our children in the future.
Yeah, I love that. Our hashtag at the Warriors is community creates change because, as we firmly fight and advocate, in Washington and our capital here in New York, my home state, Albany, that work remains and there's a lot of red tape, but in the community, grassroots, that is where the change really occurs. I have to ask you about this new role of yours, ambassador. Now, how did this come? What do you want to share about that? How did this come about? I kind of like this a
Well,
lot.
over about the last 17 years, I've been a hearing conservationist. And as a hearing conservationist, which is all part of, by the way, speech language pathology and audiology, where I'm licensed, my job was really to look at industry and to see where hearing loss was coming from. Some of it was coming from the technology that we're using, creating a lot of noise. On our trains, for example, clearly those of us that live in New York City know the noise that our ears are just getting every single day. And I have been a member of the World Safety Organization as a certified officer. And maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago, I became a UN liaison to the United Nations for the organization, where they could call upon me as needed to see what was happening at the United Nations and bring that information back. Well, the organization wants to grow. I happen to live near the UN, and they were gracious enough to appoint me, first time ever, as the ambassador of the organization to the United Nations. So my job right now is several fold that I'm creating, literally creating at the moment. And that is, one, to get as many countries as we can possibly see, as many ambassadors and consul generals, to understand the relativity of noise in their community and the effects that noise is having on their populations. To look at road safety, where majority of the accidents, particularly in Africa, are taking place. Can we have better safety engineers on board to take care of that? And the list goes on and on, particularly chemical safety, oil field safety, and to grow that knowledge within the various nations, and then to work with the universities in those nations to get more safety officers on the field, in the field, working with companies to make safety a better reality. The goal for me is when there's a disaster, when there are relief efforts, it will be Doctors Without Borders, it'll be the World Health Organization, and it'll be the World Safety Organization that will be there to look at the problems and the safety engineering that needs to go on to make sure that that will alleviate a lot of the tensions. And while doing that, fortunately, my interest in children, the getting children out of the plight that they're in, is always top of the list, and that gives me an opportunity to pursue that.
Excellent and a much needed, just having a well-oiled machine where all the pieces are put together. And the bottom line is, because I point this out every day, Dr. Jerry, it's we know things are bad or not working correctly. So like kind of investigate that. We know all that. But let's have the change, right? Let's have the change. So especially our precious kids, our future adults and leaders, we can give them such a better life. I truly believe it can be done. The work you're doing is a prime example of what everybody needs to know about raising awareness, getting involved. I also think in 2024, we don't have the luxury of not being involved. It's a different world. We all can do something, and we must, for a better future for our children. Finish us up with anything you'd like to finish us up with, some final words you want everybody on this most exciting, I'm going to say, family weekend, Father's Day, where people will travel to be together and have their family meals. What do you want everybody to know?
Well, families should stay together. Families should look at how they can better themselves through better understanding. But I think key today, particularly that we're in an election cycle, without sides being taken, but with the understanding that we've got an opportunity in a democracy to make a change, but that change will not occur if all we do is think about it. Change requires active work. And if you're an activist and you're out there fighting for the things that are necessary for you and for your family, we will be able to make a change. Now, I know we still don't have an ERA ratified after all of this, after all of these years. We still don't have a national paid family leave, and it's been 50 years. And those are just two things of gun legislation, for example, in Washington. There are just things that go on and on and on, and that is because we need more people to be active, to talk about cause. So I think activism would be a perfect term to apply to moms and dads for Mother's Day that took place, for Father's Day that is taking place, for us to really believe in our responsibility in making the world a better place, particularly for our children.
I say amen to that. Well, you know, a must read is your fantastic book, Fun Book of Fatherhood. We're going to have all of this again, everything about you in the body of this video. It is a great honor for my husband Lionel and I to call you friend. I truly mean that. We adore you. Please keep up your great work, your enthusiasm. It's infectious. And maybe it's time, Dr. Jerry, to have an update in 2024, like a part 2, a second book.
Well,
You know?
there is one being done, and that's on the family crises in America.
Oh,
And
see?
that'll be out within a year. Yes.
Okay. Okay. I love that and most necessary. Where would you like everybody to follow you? Is that on Facebook? Where is your
Follow
favorite?
me on absolutely on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. We're there.
Okay. I will list all of that out. Listen, I want to thank you, Ambassador/Doctor/Ambassador Jerry Cammarata. Thank you for taking the time for joining the Warriors today. Wishing you a wonderful, wonderful Father's Day. Thank you again for all of your great work. Let us speak more frequently. I think your voice is most necessary, that we share your expertise, get it out there, and get our men involved. Something we're doing at the Warriors right now is we are just launching our youth council, and it is a young man who's going to be at the helm of that. We need to get our men and boys more involved in all of these issues. And I thank you for being at the forefront, you know, in the 1970s of all of this. You are a tremendous joy. And I feel so good I spoke to you today. So happy Father's Day. Let's speak again soon.
Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there.
Thank you.